Okay. Hi everyone, this is SmithyQ, SmithyQ.com, and I'm back with another video analysis. And this is going to be another one that really was important in my own personal development as a chess player. Years ago, again, I've said all the time that I was an attacking player. That's the only thing I knew how to do: attack, 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 attack. And I was lucky enough to have a chess mentor who told me that's not the only way to play chess. Excuse me. He recommended that I study the games of Karpov and Petrosian. If I studied them, I would get a better understanding of positional chess. I never really got into Karpov, at least at that stage, but I found a database of Petrosian's games, and they seem to speak to me in a certain way. And perhaps it's no coincidence that I eventually became more of a positional player after studying Petrosian. And in particular, I still remember this game. This is a game, Petrosian, he was white versus Rudikov. And black, he just plays queen b4. And so now you think, okay, so you gotta either take the queen, or you move the queen, or you protect the queen. You have to do something, right? Surely that's what, I thought back. I was, 1600 at the time? But Petrosian just plays h3. Which seems bonkers, right? How on earth, after this exchange, doesn't, white's pawn structure is now so much worse. It's terrible. The pawns are... Why would you let that happen? And I sat there dumbfounded. And then I watched the rest of the game. And what we'll notice, in fact, I'll just skip ahead a little bit, is that after this, starting in here with b4, it suddenly, the idea becomes clear. Yes, the pawns are doubled, but that also means that white has two open files on the queen side, whereas black only has the one. And this pressure on the a-pawn is preventing knight takes b4, we're just going to win, and then all of a sudden this pawn, and then white is going to double, and he's got huge pressure on the queen side. And then after a6, b5, we can see that after pushing the pawn, white doesn't have double pawns anymore. He simply has the only two files. He's got extra pressure. He's got all the strength in the world on the queen side. And after 10, 15 more moves, he put a lot of pressure on his opponent. He finally blundered and he resigned. Now, Petrosian, he was under 20 at this time. I'm not sure how old he was, actually, off the top of my head, but it was in the under 20 Soviet Championship at the time. And so he wasn't, the Grandmaster Super Petrosian yet. But this idea of willingly allowing yourself to get double pawns in order to use the open files, this idea, it grasped me and it never let me go. And then it was just a few years later, I don't know when I first studied this game, but sometime later, I was able to use this idea in my own game, and it was incredible. Let me bring that. So here it is. This is my game. I was white. We're going to skip the opening. This was played in a Caro-Kann advanced thematic. This is about 10 years ago or so. I was firmly in the 1800 range, and I'll fully admit that I do not know how to play the Caro-Kann Advance. I never had. At the time, I was trying to learn how to play the Caro-Kann because Petrosian and Karpov, they played the Caro-Kann a lot. And I was okay with the main variations. I had no idea how to play the Advance. And so I just went into a Caro-Kann Advance thematic. And this is one of those games. And so what happened, we're going to go right around here, where my opponent, let's see. Let's look at this position. We'll do black's move. He plays knight b6. And so after a whole opening, it's been 19 moves, it's going to be the 20th move, we reach this position, in which I was worse out of the opening. Now it's about equal. I have the two bishops, so that should be an advantage. However, it's a block position. Who knows what's going to happen? His pawns, of course, are all blocking my bishop. My own pawns are blocking my bishop, so that's not very good. And so I was trying to figure out what the heck do I do here. And at the time, I was thinking, okay, maybe I can do something like king h1, throw the rook over, maybe throw these pawns up, and attack there. But that just doesn't work. I don't have enough pieces, and it's too slow. It doesn't really make sense. And then the idea from the Petrosian game came back to me. Or I had the idea of really, what the heck do I do with this bishop? Like, I put on e3, oh wow, it's a pawn. What can I do? And I came up with the idea, borrowed from the game, of playing bishop d2. He made a move, bishop b4, allowing him to double my pawns for me. And what's interesting is this completely changes the nature of the position. If we back up, all right, right here. Okay, it's a block position. Who knows what's going to happen? We're probably going to trade all the rooks on the c file. It'll be a draw, yawn. Maybe his knight will be better than my bishop's. Possibility. By trading this bishop, so what happened is first I got rid of my bad bishop. By the way, that was completely accidental. I wasn't thinking good bishop, bad bishop at the time. I didn't really have that understanding. I was just mostly thinking, if I can get these double pawns, I now have an open file for this rook. Whoops, let's not do that. Drawing arrows is tough, do you know that? And then I would have an open file for this rook. I have two open files, she only has one, the c file. And I have constant pressure on the a pawn in particular. So he either needs to spend a tempo to play a6, or if he moves the rook, he's going to lose the pawn. And so I've gained time by doing this. And then something interesting happened as well. Black, he plays queen e6. If he doesn't, I was thinking perhaps I can play e6 at some point. Because then I'm using my e-file power to blast through. Maybe I get an attack on the king. This pawn would be weaker and just... it'd be good. Potentially. It's an idea that he always have to watch. Especially if you were to move all of his pieces over to the queen side. Maybe I can do e6, blast through, something going on there. So he played queen e6. And this also supports the c4 square. And so he's threatening to bring the knight there. And then I can't take it twice, where I could on the previous move. So I played b3. And this, at this point, really actually shows the nature of the double pawns, because are double pawns weak? And the answer, of course, is it depends. In general, it's better not to have double pawns. However, we do see that they're controlling a very large number of squares. In particular, this knight is useless, and it's very hard to move this knight anywhere on the queen side now. The only square with double pawns that is really weak is the square right in front of it. Let's make it red. That is the weakness right there. Not really the pawns themselves. Well, okay, they are weak, but how is he going to attack them? Like, the rooks can't get there, the knights can't get there. If he attacks with his queen, I can defend with my queen. No worries. So, they're not really weak. This is the only weak square. But at the same time, I fully control that square. He can't do anything. And so, interestingly enough, in this position, the double pawns are not a weakness. Or, perhaps more accurately, the weaknesses... Black is unable to take advantage of the weaknesses. He can't attack the pawns, he doesn't control the square. Conversely, I'm able to use the advantage of the double pawns. I'm going to get my rook over here in one move. Actually, let's just put on the board. He goes here, we go here. So I have two open files. He has only the one. If he exchanges, then, of course, I would have the only open file. And things are okay. And from here, just like the Petrosian game, I was able to slowly wear down my opponent. And the exact same thematics happened. He tries to double his rooks. He's actually offering the a-pawn. But I play rook c5. And this is another interesting aspect. If he were to exchange, well, it undoubles my pawns, and I would again have the only open file. He doesn't want to exchange. If he doesn't exchange, well, then the pawn is hanging. He takes a turn to defend the pawn, and then just like the Petrosian game, I was able to, in a couple moves, play b5. to break them, let's just back up and go through this. And, okay, so we'll back up. So he plays a6. I'm able to play rook c1. And in this fight for the queen side, I have the tempo, I have the initiative. I'm the one going forward. b5 is a threat. Because if I play b5, I'm going to force it to take. My bishop will now have a square. My bishop is starting to come to life. His knight still doesn't have any good squares. Knights are better in block positions. But in this particular block position, the knight can't go anywhere. He tried to reroute it. And then after take, b5, forcing him to move. He took. In the end, this last 10 moves, my plan, it fully worked out. I have control of the c-file. I'm going to create a weakness here. I'm going to take. He's going to recapture. So the threat is take. And then my bishop always attacks the pawn. My queen can come in and attack the pawn. And he has real weaknesses. And here's where he makes his mistake. He was under pressure this entire time. He had played fairly well. He took the pawn. This allowed me not to recapture the pawn, no, but to come in myself with check. And then I take this pawn. And so now, material is still equal. This pawn is clearly going to fall. He offered exchange of queens. I just made it easy. I'm up a pawn. I'm not just up a pawn, I'm up an outside passed pawn, which has a very easy job to go straight to the finish line. And the endgame itself, I guess we'll just go through it quickly. I'm proud of this game. It's not a really interesting game in some respects. I mean, it's a game. But the idea of using what I learned in from a Grandmaster game, it just cemented it home as one of my favorite games. Not every favorite game needs to be sacrificing the queen. And so, let's see, so we back up. So he reroutes his knight, I win the d-pawn, and then he takes the f-pawn, which just loses instantly. Of course, this makes sense. If you had a choice between taking a blocked pawn or a passed pawn, the d-pawn is threatening to go to queening very, very quickly. Which pawn do you take? You take the passed pawn every single time. The main problem is that once my bishop is here, his knight has no squares anymore. That is, my bishop, right, is controlling both of these. And if I'm able to exchange his knight, he's simply lost. Again, my outside pawn is going to win. And if he goes here, here I take, well, I'm still going to take it, right? And if his knight is way over here doing something, then, well, my pawn is going to queen very, very quickly. And that's what happened, actually. King f8, I push the pawn, I exchange immediately, push the pawn, and then, oh, did I push too fast? No, I had this lovely move. And then after here, if he takes this pawn, well then he's outside the square, and this one queens, and if he doesn't take the pawn, we can see one of them are going to queen regardless. So that was that. So again, is this the most well-played game in the world? No, there's mistakes on both of our sides. But what I'm trying to get at here isn't so much to show, oh wow, I played so amazing when I was an 1800 player. No, that's not the case at all. It's the ideas. Why do we study master games? It's not just to, it's not to memorize them move by move, right? The theory or not that. It's to look at the ideas, to make them your own, right? And so I was able to, all right, here again, this opening, I did not play this very well, right? Black was better. He made an inaccuracy here, and that allowed me to get the bishop pair. And it's in this position, because if I did not see the Petrosian game before, I would never think of this and this. And I'd probably be stuck with my previous plan of something like, coming over here, which would be terrible. And then I'd probably lose this game, and it would not be one of my favorites. But because I had studied the game, and I remembered that position, and of course the reason I remembered it, let me just bring that up. So the reason that this resonated with me so much is because you think he has to do something about the queen, right? What are you going to do? You're just going to let him get the pawns? What is going on? And then 15 moves later or so, he's got a clearly better position, and Petrosian makes it look so easy. Right? He's just pushes him back, you know? You think that, you know, this open files are going to hurt him, pushing the pawns. No. Petrosian was just this amazing position. He understood position so well. And by seeing that, just this allowing the pawns and then the play that followed, how do you forget that when it makes such an impression? When you think that that has to be a mistake, but a grandmaster played it. And then he shows you why it's not a mistake. Right? That's how you study the games. You get those ideas, you ask questions, and you internalize them the best you can. And again, it's using words. I'm not really speaking in terms of variations too much, or he does this, he does that, tactics. It's the ideas, because the more ideas you understand, it just increases your chess vocabulary so much, and it allows you to find moves in your own games that you would never think of otherwise. This is why it's so important. Okay? So I highly recommend, you know, go find your favorite grandmasters, or whoever. It doesn't have to be Petrosian. It's one of mine. Right? Go through the games and gather the ideas, right? Not so much the moves and ADD. That's important as well, but get the ideas, because it's the ideas that you can use in your own games. All right? Okay, so that's that. I think that's it. Nothing else to add. Another video next week. So again, SmithyQ, SmithyQ.com. Comment, you can like, all that stuff would be great. Tell me what you want to see in the future. Hopefully I'll finish some games soon and I'll have some fresh, like deep analysis, but I really wanted to share this one. Because I only recently rediscovered this game. Like, I remembered the idea, but I didn't actually know which game who the opponent was. I knew Petrosian was white, but I had no idea who black was. I couldn't find the game, and then by chance, I stumbled upon it. I instantly remembered my own game, and then that's why we're here today. All right. So again, questions, comments, leave them in the thing, and we'll see you next week. SmithyQ, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.